All right, thank you everyone for watching us today. My name is Kayla St. Eliard. I'm with the Agency for Substance Abuse Prevention, and we're doing our podcast here for the month of March. Today we're going to be discussing opioid and substance misuse, as well as the mental health issues that plague our community. I have Mr. John Garlick here with me today, and he's going to help elaborate on this with me a little bit, and also just kind of give a little bit about his experience and what he does within the community. So one thing that I have learned recently is that the opioid death numbers and overdose death numbers for 2019 were about 11 or 12, and they have doubled for the year of 2020. And we just recently spoke with someone earlier, and they let us know that the main cause of these overdose deaths have been heroin, unfortunately. And that's really, to me, really sad. And so I have Mr. Garlick here. He's going to let us know a little bit about himself and what he has done within the community, and just give us a little bit more information about how substance misuse can affect you, your mental health, and just all of the knowledge that he has.
Oh my goodness, Kayla, thanks. I feel like I should be sitting on a telephone book because I'm like a really short guy, and I am.
No, you're
but that's
fine.
Okay. So I recently retired, well, a year ago, September, retired from the Calhoun County Sheriff's Office. I was the first mental health officer for Calhoun County, which gave me the authority through probate court to order people off the street and into a hospital for 72 hours to be evaluated.
Wow.
And then we would facilitate petitions for commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that, and then worked my way up and had the honor of being Chief Deputy for Sheriff Matthew Wade in his first term of office.
Cool.
And then I got the opportunity to retire, yay! And my whole retirement plan has always been to open a private practice as a licensed counselor. I've been a licensed counselor since early 2000s, maybe 2002, I think, but always wanted to go into private practice, and the timing was right, and so I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been in private practice since last September of 2019. I opened my door, hung my shingle up, and so I do that. I take private clients. I teach adjunct at JSU in the counseling ed. Teach some classes at the Law Enforcement Academy on mental health and de-escalation, and do the same thing for the National Institute of Jail Operations, and whatever else. I'm intern, part-time director at Family Link Success Academy, and so that's what I'm doing these days.
Yeah.
which is probably a little bit busier than I want to be, but
Yeah.
my wife tells me I like to be busy.
Yeah.
So there I am. But I'm not surprised that drug overdoses are higher than they were in 2019, and it's probably all related to COVID.
Yeah.
I've been seeing it in clients and in people in general. You're staying at home, you can't go out and do the things you normally do, and so people get depressed. And it's interesting, so introverts like to be alone.
Mm-hmm.
They do, and so introverts need to recharge their stress battery. You introvert, you're around people all day long. You go home and you want to de-stress, relax, and recharge that battery. Introverts need to do it alone. They need some quiet time, chill, be in their head for a little bit.
Yeah.
And if they do it purposely, they can recharge fairly quickly. Problem is, introverts can stay alone too long. That battery can overcharge, and when it does, you get anxiety and depression. Extroverts, just the opposite, they need to be around other people. At the end of a long day, they need to engage with some folks, relax with a group of people. But you can stay at the party too long,
Yeah.
okay? And you'll get overcharged and tired and exhausted. If they're forced at home during COVID, now you have the worst of both worlds. You've got extroverts who are forced to be alone, so their battery's discharging quickly. You've got introverts who are overcharged and now feeling depressed and anxiety ridden. And if there's any substance abuse history in those folks at all, or any impulse control problems at all, they're going to turn toward alternate means of treating their bad feelings. And so unfortunately, if you went into COVID as a drug user, you're probably using more, and that's not good. And of course, heroin's been around in the county for a while, but it's been gradually increasing. But I'm not surprised that it may have had a blip last year. The synthetic heroin's been around for a while too, and that stuff's really bad. Not that heroin's bad enough, but synthetic heroin is causing strokes and seizures And so you're seeing, 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds having massive strokes, losing half their body, just like you would if you were, 80 years old having a stroke.
Oh my goodness.
And
That's
so that
intense.
leads to further complications, which lead to suicide. It's drugs are bad.
Yeah.
And there's nothing good about them. And even innocuous drugs, like marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
We see marijuana being legalized all over the country, medical marijuana, and certainly the CBD, the non-THC marijuana, has lots of good medical benefits. Apparently, I'm not a scientist, but I read what they're saying, and it seems to have some justifiable medical benefits. The THC is what's causing damage, and the damage that it causes is to your motivation center of your brain, but even more importantly than that, to the fear and anxiety center of your brain. So I run into a lot of teens who maybe they have normal teenage angst. They're nervous about being around other people, or maybe they have test anxiety or something.
Yeah.
So all their friends are smoking, so they start smoking, and they smoke a little bit, they feel chill, anxiety goes away, they're feeling good, right? So hey, fantastic. Even people with test anxiety, ADHD kids, they smoke dope and they're chill. Okay, get it. Problem is, it's punched holes in that anxiety center. So the next time, so when they're not high and they have an anxiety issue, it's worse. So they smoke more and it gets worse. They smoke more and it gets worse. And next thing you know, you got an 18-year-old with a full-blown anxiety disorder that now their brain is damaged there. And even if you stop smoking, it doesn't heal. It's damaged. Though that brain damage doesn't heal itself, you can find workarounds. Okay.
Yeah.
You kill off brain cells, your brain can find workarounds. But in this particular case with anxiety disorders, you've got to purposely work around it. So you can't just sit there and go, oh, I've got some brain damage, I'll be okay. You really have to do some things to retrain your brain. And that's why trauma therapists and anxiety people, so I do that work too, work with folks for a long time to get them to rebuild or reconnect synaptic stuff in your brain so that now you can control that anxiety. Because anxiety disorders are pretty debilitating.
Yeah.
So even something as simple as marijuana can cause that kind of damage. But you go into the harder drugs, the heroines, the cocaines, crack, and you're doing huge damage to your brain. Methamphetamine is almost a broad shot to brain damage. It just hits all these centers. And what you see typically in people who have used a lot of meth is that they appear bipolar. They will go from really sad to really happy. And you're like, wow, these people are bipolar. Well, they're not, because that swing, that emotional swing, takes place in about an hour. Whatever those triggers are, they'll go from happy to sad, happy to sad, happy to sad. That looks like bipolar, but it's not. It's brain damage. And again, they have to do some pretty serious work to repair that.
Yeah.
But I think this has been a tough year on suicide. It's been a tough year, 2020, COVID. The COVID season has been a tough year for drug use and suicide and depression and anxiety. Even people who have never experienced or who've coped really well with stress and anxiety in their life are finding it harder to cope. So yeah, it's a tough year.
I've actually found that too. And what about, I know you said that you worked with the people to get, what was it, the 72-hour hold before they're,
right?
Is it released into a mental hospital, or?
Well, it could be two things. The idea is that you get them someplace because they're in crisis, and you have 72 hours to evaluate them. Now, some folks, they're just having a little bit of a crisis, and 72 hours they can go home.
Yeah.
Maybe they're off their meds, they just need to get back on their meds again.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just something they just need to get through. But then what we do is we do a petition for commitment so that after those 72 hours, you've got the probate court to step in and say, let's get you a good, clean psychiatric evaluation, and let's take a moment to figure out what's going on with you.
Yeah.
So that we can say, okay, fine, you're good to go home, or yeah, you got something going on and maybe we need to order you to outpatient.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's really bad and we need to order you to stay in the hospital for a little while.
Yeah.
And that system works really well when you have facilities to put people in. And our problem throughout the country is that there's not enough crisis beds. In the state of Alabama alone, we're short about 2,000 crisis beds.
Goodness, has COVID affected that too, as well, not being able to admit a lot?
COVID hasn't, I don't know that it's made much of an impact on the level of beds available for psychiatric care. Those beds have been dwindling away every year. So I don't think we can attribute COVID for keeping people out of the psych ward. But it's always been a shortage, and it's worse now because you have more people having psychotic breaks and they need those beds. So it's always a problem, and it's going to be a problem until we have more designated mental health facilities and we have more crisis beds. The state of Alabama is working on that. I think they've got a bill right now, that's going to allow law enforcement to pick people up that they think are having a psychotic break or are mentally ill and endanger themselves and others, and be able to take them to a designated mental health facility without having a mental health officer make that order. They're going to have the ability to do that. The problem is there won't be a designated mental health facility. In Calhoun County, the only designated mental health facility we have is Highland Health Systems and their 16-bed crisis unit, which is generally full. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, law enforcement has no place to take them. They can't take them to the emergency room at RMC because RMC is not a designated mental health facility. They have a psych ward, but they are not a designated mental health facility. And they don't want to be because they don't want to have to take people that they frankly can't bill. You know, it comes all back to money. And now the state is working on a really neat model that comes out of Texas. It's a nonprofit in Texas, but I think they're kind of building it out here in Alabama. But it's a simple model. Law enforcement takes them to a facility, a crisis facility that has a medical screening unit. So they've got nurse practitioner or nurses there to screen you. What are they screening for? General health problems that could be a problem, or drugs or alcohol. You know, is there something medically going on with this person? And if they're medically stable, or they can stabilize them fairly quickly, they put them into a crisis bed. So they have 10 or 16 crisis beds tied to this facility, just for holding them for 72 hours. So they're there for 72 hours, they get a good evaluation, and then what do they do next? They either go home, they go to another facility, or they go to outpatient. So the state of Alabama is funding somehow, I'm not sure the mechanism, but they're going to put some of those regionally. I'm not sure where. I know there's going to be a couple in northern Alabama, not here, not in Calhoun County, but up in Madison maybe. And I guess they're going to see how that works. Certainly no law enforcement from Calhoun County is going to drive 2 hours, 2.5 hours to Huntsville to drop somebody off, but maybe they'll do this and they'll see that it works really well, and they'll start popping them up all over the state. But,
I would love to see that, because I actually used to work at Highland Health. It was about maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And just seeing the different patients or consumers that we would get come in, and it was devastating, because some of them had been battling that, you know, their mental illness their whole life. And then there was a couple that I had met that they claimed it was drug induced. Like one guy, he had smoked spice, and he, ever since then, he's just kind of not been the same. And I never knew that. Like, I always knew, like, you know, drugs did mess with your mind and things like that, and kind of, you know, I guess not retrained your brain, but affected your brain in a certain way. But I just never knew that just one time of taking one drug could just cause you that effect for literally the rest of your life. He's been in and out of the facility for years, and it just makes me so sad to see. So how often do you see people that maybe have not had like any history of, I know you were talking earlier about maybe they had, you know, test anxiety or small anxieties, but what if they didn't have like any issues with any anxiety or depression or anything like that, but then they started a drug and then all of a sudden it's full blown, they now have a disorder?
Yeah, I've seen that a lot when I was working with teens. You see that a lot. They just started using as a teenager because they had that test anxiety, and then you see that they've got problems. I see it in clients occasionally, where you've got adults, 30-something-year-olds who no longer are using drugs. They stopped 15 years ago. Stopped when they were 20 or 18, when they got out of high school. Stopped using drugs altogether. This was bad for them. They recognize it.
Yeah.
But now they're in their 30s and they've been coping with anxiety, but it keeps getting worse and it keeps getting worse. Mm-hmm. And they're like, okay, so what's going on that I'm having anxiety? And it could be they're having marriage problems, it could be COVID, it could be job stress, it could be a lot of things, but they're not coping with it well. And they want to know why. And so I always ask what their drug history is, which is uncomfortable for people to talk about.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, what kind of drugs did you use? And I'm like,
yeah.
But I need to know, because if it's a lot of marijuana use, then their anxiety is probably caused by brain damage. Mm-hmm. And so we have to get them first to accept that.
Yeah.
That what you've got is brain damage, and now let's work on retraining the brain. Because the brain is an organ. We tend to think of the brain as some mystical thing because it's got all our thoughts in it. We're all different. We all have different thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's like magic. But the brain is essentially, it is an organ. It's like our livers and heart and kidneys. And when something goes wrong, you've got a brain disease. Mm-hmm. And brain disease just happens to manifest itself in behaviors and thoughts, delusions, hallucinations, whatever. But it's a brain disease, and one day, way past my lifetime, but we may have learned enough about the brain that just like we can give you cholesterol meds to reduce your cholesterol to prevent heart attack, mm-hmm. we might be able to give meds to eliminate hallucinations or to ease or to help you better handle anxiety. Mm-hmm. You know, we have medications now that are antidepressants and anti-anxieties, but they come with side effects.
Oh yeah.
And basically, some of those meds, they work. We know they work because we used them and they worked, mm-hmm. rather than saying we're putting this chemical in your brain because we know it's the right chemical to do this. But we're learning more and more about the brain every year, mm-hmm. and a lot of it is coming from a joint effort between medical doctors and psychiatrists at the federal level. So your what is it, the Center for Medical, it's the Federal Medical, Department of Medicine, Department of Mental Health, whatever that is at the federal level.
Yeah.
National Institute for Mental Health, National Institute for Medicine, that's it.
Yeah.
NIM and NIM. But traditionally, medical doctors and psychiatrists didn't talk to each other. There was this kind of you're not my people thing between the two of them. The medical doctors were like, psychiatrists, that's mystical science. We don't know what they're doing. Yeah. The psychiatrists were, no, we're medical doctors too. And they just wouldn't talk to each other. And so I think it's Patrick Kennedy that kind of started a nonprofit foundation to put these people together, mm-hmm. and incentivize them to work on the brain. And so I think we're going to learn a lot about the brain if we do that. If medical science and mental health science come together, mm-hmm. we'll probably figure out more about brain disease and make it easier to treat.
Yeah.
Might be the right word.
Yeah.
Maybe even prevent it.
Yeah.
A lot of mental illness is hereditary.
I'm learning that.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that's a little soapbox for me. So if breast cancer runs in your family, mm-hmm. like you got it, your mom has it, your grandma has it, now you have a daughter. At 10 years old, what's she going to know a lot about? You're gonna educate her. Look, honey,
you need to,
breast cancer runs in our family. You need to start learning how to watch out for that stuff.
Yeah.
And how to check yourself. And we're going to talk about that with our kids.
Yeah.
We don't do that with mental illness. Mm-hmm. And so, maybe you got bipolar and granddad had bipolar and great-granddad had bipolar, or maybe it's schizophrenia. Those are the kind of mental illnesses that run in the family, mm-hmm. and we don't talk about it. Like, oh, no. And then your kid goes off to college, they have a psychotic break, and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And a lot of parents are going, well, didn't dodge that bullet, did he?
Yeah.
And it's sad because fortune favors the prepared mind. So if you're talking to your kids about mental illness that they might inherit, mm-hmm. they might not, but they might, let's start being open about the things you're thinking and feeling and seeing. And if you feel uncomfortable about something, I know a bunch of people with schizophrenia who they had their major psychotic break at 19, 20, 21, but they will tell you they felt really weird. They had weird things happening when they were teenagers.
Yeah.
But they didn't want to tell anybody.
Yeah.
Because, like, well, maybe this is just something.
Yeah.
But if they're tuned into it, like, could be schizophrenia, they're at 12 years old, they're going, hey, I saw something really strange. I'm a little nervous about what that is. Well, okay, let's prepare you for your psychotic break. Or let's, we know that these things could be triggers. So a breakup, emotional breakup, bad score on a test anxiety, these things can trigger events. So when you're having that happen, when you're feeling lots of stress, or you know that the relationship's going to break up, let's have a safety plan.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I know I'm learning that within my own family right now. I actually have a family member that was diagnosed a few years ago with, I think it was schizophrenia, and this is the first time our family actually sat down and talked about it, because I know I've struggled myself just with anxiety and stuff like that, and I did have a little bout of depression a few years ago, but it wasn't in our family. It was kind of hush hush, don't say anything, people are gonna think you're weird if you say something. But just actually, I majored in psychology for a reason, to kind of learn different things. And just with knowing what I learned, it definitely is in the family. And I was telling my mom, I'm we have to find out possibly where it was before this family member, and we have to, when I have kids, I know I'm actually about to have a child in a few months.
Yeah, congratulations.
And thank you. And I know when my child starts getting maybe, I hate to say it, as young as 5 and 6, when they're of age of understanding, I'm gonna talk to them about their feelings and stuff going on with them, because I don't want them, like you said, to go off to school and then all of a sudden they have this meltdown, and none of us know what to do. I want to make sure my child is equipped and I'm equipped to be able to handle things like that. So I definitely am so glad you brought that up, because I do feel like it's not a taboo subject.
No.
And we have to stop treating it like it's so taboo, or from what I've heard from people say, oh, you're just making an excuse because you have anxiety or because you have depression, and that's not an excuse. People deal with this every day, and I wish I knew what I knew then, what I know now with my family member, because there were signs always there, but because I wasn't educated, because my family members were not educated, we just kind of saw it as, well, she's just being crazy. She's just in a mood, or she's going through something and acting out, but she was literally battling something, and none of us were there for her. And I kind of beat myself up about it sometimes, because I'm if I just would have known, I should have been there for her, But
you didn't, and it's not your fault that you didn't. And she's getting help now.
Yeah,
so
she's
good.
Definitely getting help.
And even something like schizophrenia is not necessarily a future-ending disease. There's a great video out there. You can Google it. It's called "I Am Not a Monster." It's a TED Talk. Cecilia McLeod is the one talking. She has schizophrenia. She is a astrophysicist at Penn State, and she talks about, her TED Talk is about her experience with schizophrenia. And it's classic. She didn't know she had schizophrenia until after her first major psychotic break, but she'd been in the hospital a couple of times before that. She called her mother at one point and said, I'm having a hard time. I'm seeing things that aren't there. I think I'm really sick. And her mother was like, no, don't tell anybody. Think about your sister's career. Think about your sister's future. They'll think you're crazy. They'll think you're violent. And what that tells me is mom was in mom's head, she's going, oh, I guess she got grandma's disease. Well, we better cover this up. So people, they knew it was coming, and they didn't prepare the child for it. And you need to do that. Even if it doesn't happen, they're better prepared. So as soon as your child's old enough to kind of understand emotions, and it's just healthy anyway, let's talk about emotions. Let's label emotions. And most importantly, let's say that whatever emotion you're feeling is okay. You want to be angry, be angry. You want to be sad and depressed, be sad and depressed. So long as you don't hurt yourself, hurt somebody else, or break stuff that isn't yours. You can break all your own stuff you want. But so we get all hung up in that. Our American culture anyway is one that says if you're not a shiny, happy, smiling person all the time, you must need medication and therapy. And that's wrong. People that work with you don't know that you don't need to know you have depression any more than they need to know you might have COPD or high blood pressure. unless you want to share it with them. That's up to you.
Yeah.
They don't need to know you're a diabetic unless you walk around with an insulin pump that everybody can see, you know.
Yeah.
So it's no different. Mental illness is a brain disease. It's no different than any other disease.
Mm-hmm.
The standard of care is medication and therapy. You should never be taking psychotropic meds without therapy.
Yes.
Because it's only half the equation. And it catches people because we don't encourage people to be educated about mental illness. We encourage people with diabetes, to learn about diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
They change their diet, they monitor their blood insulin, they tweak their pump, they do everything. They know all about it.
Yeah.
They can tell you stuff you don't know.
Yeah.
Right? But we don't do that with mental illness. So what happens is people are kind of ignorant of what's going on, and they'll go to their doctor. So you'll be depressed. You're like, gosh, I think I've been depressed too long. I better go see my doctor. So you go see your medical doctor. You won't go to a psychiatrist because, oh my God, right?
Yeah.
Of course, we have a shortage of psychiatrists. It'll take you 6-8 months to get in.
Yeah.
So it's not bad to go to your doctor. But you go to your doctor, he's going to look at you and go, okay, well, I'm going to give you an antidepressant. And you'll be like, great. Because every time I go to my doctor with a runny nose, he gives me something for that, and I take it, my nose clears up. So great, he's going to give me an antidepressant, and I'm going to be happy now. And that's not the way antidepressants work.
Yeah.
They take the edge off so you're not as depressed, but now it's a great opportunity to go see a therapist so you can learn what's behind the depression, learn the skills to manage your own emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So self-medication is all about, partially about, not understanding why you're taking these meds. So medication and therapy. So you go to your doctor, he gives you an antidepressant, and you don't feel better, so you start taking crack cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
But even in the mental health system, we do a pretty dismal job of educating our consumers.
Mm-hmm.
So even in a place like Highland Health Systems, where you were there, there's so many people there, and they're turning over so many counselors that you may not even see the same counselor from time to time. That's frustrating for the consumer. The psychiatrist hasn't got time to educate you. So what typically happens, you got bipolar disorder, right? And so you're meeting with a psychiatrist, he's talking about the meds. I want you to take these meds, they're gonna help do this and stabilize this, and you're looking at him like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And the psychiatrist is like, look, you just got a chemical imbalance.
Yeah.
Just take the meds, you'll feel better. And that's a disservice to the consumer. People need to understand their brain disease just like they understand their diabetes. You have diabetes, your doctor, that nurse is going to give you pamphlets, they're going to explain it to you, they're going to say, look, if you don't eat right, you're going to die. This is what you have to eat.
Yeah.
Okay? You got this monitor, you got to prick your finger and do this is what it's telling you.
Yeah.
You can't let it change, okay?
Yeah.
And they own it. They're successful treating diabetes because they say, look, I have diabetes, I have to do these things.
Yeah.
Right? People with mental illness, they don't necessarily do that. They're like, I'm taking my meds, I'm going to my therapy, I still feel bad, I don't understand why, I'm mentally ill. You got a brain disease.
Yeah.
Own it. Let them say, look, you have bipolar disorder. It's a brain disease. It manifests itself in manic phases and depression phases. You're gonna vacillate through these things. On your meds, we're gonna dampen that, but you're not gonna feel as happy as you used to, but you're also not gonna feel as sad as you used to. But you really need to go to therapy because you're gonna miss being happy.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to work with your missing being happy because we want you to stay on this med. We understand there's other side effects, but let me explain the side effects and let me explain what this disease is about and let me explain how you have to live with it. Let's do some monitoring of triggers. You know, maybe weather condition has something to do with it. So let me get you to own your brain disease so that you can better understand it. Understand your triggers, understand, some things can be triggered by weather or by just other people or by what you eat. You may be eating healthy, but you may have some kind of food allergy that affects your brain.
I'm so sorry.
So it's okay. It's a COVID. So it's important to educate people, and if we don't educate people, then they self-medicate. They don't understand what they're doing, and we do that. That's a disservice. I think the mental health system in general, we could all do a better job taking the time to educate our consumers.
Well, thank you so much for that information. I think I learned a lot today. And I could literally sit here and talk to you all day because you're awesome. You are so full of knowledge, and that's why I'm so glad you are out in the community and you are helping people, because people need you. We need more people like you that are not only knowledgeable, but just, you seem like you have a passion for people just in general, and we need more people like that. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking.
You're welcome. Alrighty, you guys, if you need more information about prevention education, please feel free to call us at 256-831-4436 or visit our website at asaprev.com. Thank you.